Again, the name of this, if you're following him in the book, we're on page 57. It's actually One Blood, One Race. There's two segments in it. I'm going to knock them both off today because I think they're very closely related and don't need to be separated into two segments for any reason. In the mid 1800s, there was a ship that was called the Beagle. There was a young theologian. Not only a biblical theologian, he graduated Bible college. He was also a certified biologist, or studying the field of biology. And as they traveled down across the waters, he began to come up with an idea in his head about how things began to be created and how things were actually moving out there. His name, as many of you know, was Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin, as he landed on the islands, began to look at birds. And he began to look at the different kinds of birds, and he began to change his biblical reasoning to a scientific reasoning to begin to understand how these birds came about and how they changed and why we have different kinds of birds and how birds, and he took that philosophy and that began to change into where birds changed into other animals, and now we have all different kinds of things changing into different other kinds, and we have eventually we had monkeys turning into man. The book that he wrote was the Origin of Species. Y'all ever heard of that book? That is not the whole title of that book. Evolution, in fact, is the core foundation for all racism. A lot of folks are not aware of that. The full name of that book was The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. The preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. A lot of folks wonder where this whole thing of racism really took a real bounce lead. It was with the core theology of evolution, and yet we don't even associate it with it. Darwin turned out to be part of this concept. His father was a diehard evolutionist, and he began to embed these things in other people's minds. Darwin is the one that made it famous. Darwin is not the one who invented it. He's not the first one with his thought, with the whole thought process. The idea was firmly planted in his mind. He began to spread it. It began to grow. It began to mature. It began to seep into our scientific society, or if you will, realm. They began to embed the whole thing. That eventually changed to where it came into our textbooks. Our textbooks began to incorporate evolutionary theories into them. And eventually what happened, folks, is it actually spread it even into the church. Or now, in theological seminaries across America, we begin to accept some of the ideas of evolution. And it's taught to these young pastors who are going out there. Mainly you'll find it in the gap theory and the day-age theory, which we've talked a little bit about. I can't go a lot into that today, so I can get this one race, one blood, one race done. It didn't take long for it began to ripen. In fact, it only took about 100 years. Some say 150, that's cool with me. It didn't take long whatsoever for this idea to really ripen and really begin to embed inside of our minds, to where people today question Genesis 1 through 11 more than any other scripture in all the Bible. They just simply say we don't have to take it the way it's written. We can take it as simply a picture and a concept of what God is giving us. No, it is the way God did it. God said, "Let there be," and there was. That's the way this whole thing happened, to include Adam and Eve. Evolutionary ideas, the thought of it began to fuel racism. Racists use evolution to justify their hatred for other people and for other races. Let's go back to Hitler. Hitler was a die-hard evolutionist, a fact that a lot of people don't know. Hitler was a die-hard evolutionist, and yet what did Hitler say? Hitler said that we got to get rid of the races, starting with the Jews. The Jews were actually below anybody else. They were the closest thing to an ape that we had. And so he said, let's get rid of them. And his idea was, if you read all about him, was to eventually destroy all of the races until he got with the perfect Aryan. I would say Iranian. The perfect Aryan race. But the idea was to kill everybody. If you're not blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and you're sitting here or you're listening to this or video, you were on the agenda of Hitler to be killed, to be wiped out. The Jews were only the starting point of this whole thing. His idea was to get rid of everybody to where we had a blonde-haired, blue-eyed society. The Jews, the Gypsies were part of this whole thing. The Africans, the what we term as colored people, they were next on the agenda to begin to move through this entire thing. And yet, the idea that he had, the evolutionary idea that he had, is not foreign to what we have today. In the early 1900s, we had Orta. I got his name written down here somewhere without looking for it. He brought to America, I think it was back in 1924, he brought a pygmy over here from Africa. And what he did is he talked the pygmy into getting into a cage with an orangutan. And this was in St. Louis. And what they did is they showed and displayed this cage with a pygmy and an orangutan in the same cage to show people how closely related they were. And so therefore, people begin to ingest the idea into their mind that colored people were close to apes. And we're going to learn about something today. There's a substance called melanin. Melanin, and I'm not going to get a lot into genetics, but in order to explain what I'm talking about, I need to talk about some basic genetics. And I promise you I'm not going to go deep with it because I need to understand it too. If I go too deep, number one, I can't go real deep with it, okay? That's probably the bottom line truth. I can't go very deep with it, okay? But there's some real basic concepts about it that are clear to understand if you begin to when you begin to understand this whole concept of racism. Let's start first with Cain. Who did Cain marry? Has anybody here ever asked that question or had that question asked of you? Who did Cain marry? That is a big question of people in the world today. And the last thing they want to go to is the Bible. If you begin to look at the Bible will explain to you who Cain married. And there's a couple of verses. 1 Corinthians 15 and 45 is one key verse. And you've got to take these again in sequential order to begin to understand. 1 Corinthians 15 and 45. He said, and so it is written, the first man, Adam, was made a living soul, and the last Adam was made a quickening spirit, speaking of Jesus Christ. The Bible relates Jesus to Adam. I find this to be an interesting concept, I guess. And I don't want to take this literally, but it's an interesting idea that if Jesus, now the blood of Jesus Christ, I don't believe was, but if you look at some of it, the relational idea of the whole thing, it's very interesting that Jesus was actually related to Adam, because as the Bible says, through the line of Adam, he came, which actually relates you and I to Jesus Christ. And yet all of us in this room, all of us in the church, all of us in the world are all related to Adam and Eve. The Bible says here, Adam was the first. Okay? That's what he was. And therefore, if Adam and Eve were first, everybody came from Adam and Eve at some point in time. Okay? People say, well, what about the flood? Well, they all came from Adam and Eve also, and therefore we all came from them. You can take it any way you want, but you ain't getting rid of Adam and Eve. Okay? So, therefore, we are all related. Think about that for a second, okay? We're all related. Black, white, yellow, red. It doesn't matter what your skin color is. Every human person on the face of the earth came from Adam and Eve. And therefore, whether you like it or not, we're all related. It's very interesting. The Bible says Eve was the mother of all living. Oh, of course she was. She was the first woman. And she bared Cain and Abel. Acts 17:26. Acts 17:26. And Paul told us that God made one blood of nations of man. So God made one blood of all nations of man. Not some nations, all. For to dwell on the face of the earth. So the fact of the matter is, whether you want to look at Old Testament or look at New Testament, we are all related. We are all brothers and sisters in a same bloodline. Literally in a bloodline, in a literal bloodline. We are all related, folks. Whether you like that or not. What's that? It reminds me of a picture somebody, I think Bruce gave it to me one time. I smile. There you go. I smile because you're my brother. I laugh because there's nothing you can do about it. I got that hanging over my little desk back there at the house. I look up every now and then and just think of Bruce. But that's a fact of the matter. Whether you like it, whether you accept it, whether you even want to think about it, here's the fact: you are my brothers and sisters. We are from the same bloodline, folks, because we all came from Adam and Eve. And so when you begin to take the core of this whole thing back, you'll begin to understand that's why I want to start at the beginning. Genesis 5:4 says that Adam and Eve had sons and daughters. Everybody associates Adam and Eve. They're 900 years old when they died, 900 and some years old. And everybody associates them with Cain, Abel, and Seth. That's it. Okay, the end of the family. Let me tell you something, folks. In 900 years, they had a boatload of kids. They had a heap load of kids. And the Bible says they had sons and daughters, plural. The genetics of Adam and Eve, I'm going to take this step by step. The genetics of Adam and Eve were absolutely perfect. Adam and Eve were created what? In the likeness and in the image of God, right? They were created with zero sin. Adam and Eve did not even know what right or what wrong was. It wasn't a concept. God said, if you eat of that tree over there, you'll know right from wrong. Well, how would they know that? They didn't know wrong from the beginning. Why? Because everything they knew was right. Okay? But God still gave them a decisive mind. You got to make up your mind whether you're going to stay like this or whether you want to touch that tree. That's your choice. But I'm telling you, don't touch it. Because then you'll be like us and you'll know right from wrong. So I think it's really cool that Adam and Eve, when they were created, didn't know what wrong, they didn't know what evil even was. Okay? The bloodline, the genetics in Adam and Eve were absolutely 100% perfect. Their children, they had offspring, Cain and Abel, amongst a bunch of other kids. But Cain and Abel are the ones we hear about. The genetics that came from them would have been also the same way. The line of children that they had would have all been the same way. Now, we believe today that you cannot marry your brothers and sisters. Okay? Well, we believe it for a reason because it changed at Moses, and I'll get into that in just a minute. I want to take this in blocks, if you will. The genetic code of Adam and Eve would have been very unique in that it was uncorrupted. And therefore, if the brothers married the sisters, they could have also had children. And those children would not have been deformed because the genetic code was perfect. And therefore, it wouldn't have mattered. People say, they can't do that. Moses said, you shall not marry your brothers and sisters. Wait a minute, folks. The law ain't there yet. The law's not here yet. The law's not been written. Okay? They're going by everything God said. God said, Adam and Eve, here you are. Go out and multiply and fill the earth. How are they going to do that if they don't marry their brothers and sisters? And they don't have to worry about genetic deformations. They don't have to worry about genetic mutations. They don't have to worry about any of that because the genetic code is absolutely perfect. Our genetic code today is so messed up that we don't hardly know. That's why we got to marry far outside of relatives. Some people say, don't even go to first cousins. Some people say we can. Whatever. I say go as far away from the family code as you can, because that's where you begin to get, you can have kids and stuff like that without worrying about the mutational codes being messed up. We don't marry close relatives today. We have obeyed the laws that Moses actually put down. We don't do it because there's genetic reasons why they don't do it, and why God gave that code to Moses. By the time Moses came on board, we're into this thing by about 2,500 years. Okay, by the time he came on board, and God said, okay, from this point forward, no more. Don't do it anymore, because God knew that this is not a good thing anymore, folks. Your genetic code is so messed up through sin right now, you can't do it anymore. So let's stop. And therefore, now we receive the law, and it's not done anymore. Abraham was married to his, they say probably his half-sister. Has anybody ever heard that Abraham was probably married to a black woman? Anybody ever heard that before? Very possible. Very, very possible. In fact, I think probably is true. Some people say, how is that possible? We didn't have colored people yet. Adam and Eve, no matter what your pictures say, were probably not white. Okay? All the people that built the Tower of Babel were probably not white. All the people, when Noah and his wife got on the ark, probably not white. In fact, Jesus was not white. Okay? Jesus was not a Caucasian. He was a Jew. But that ain't what your pictures show. Your pictures all show all these Caucasians doing all this stuff here, when in fact, that is not the way it was. There's a, let me get into melanin. Melanin is a substance inside of your skin. I'm going to call it a substance. That's probably not a good word for it, but it's a thing that is in your skin. And melanin is what determines your skin color. If you actually put melanin, they put it under a pap smack or something like that, they call it, whatever. It'll actually turn up black for everybody. Whether you're a black person, a white person, a yellow person, or a red person, doesn't matter what color you are, your melanin will always turn up as a black color. In fact, melanin in reality is a brown color. Now follow this very carefully, okay? Because this is, when I learned this, I was like, whoa, I started looking at myself. because I just thought it was so cool. Melanin is a brown color. And every person in the world is made up of it. If you have no melanin in your system, what would you be? Albino. You'd be actually the white color. You become an albino person, which we know they have a lot of skin problems because of the lack of melanin. So we don't have black people, white people, brown people, and red people. No, we have melanin positive and melanin negative. That's what we have walking around the earth right now. I tell you, begin to look at yourself, okay, and you'll see brownish. And what happens if you, as a Caucasian, sit under the sun? What color do you turn? Brown. And we all think that's, for lack of better words, sexy or cool or whatever, to turn brownish in color. Here we go, because melanin is too cool. It's kind of like lavender. Not quite as cool as that, maybe, but melanin explains the entire thing of what we're talking about here, okay? And I began to think about this as melanin positive and melanin negative. Let's put two dogs together, okay? A dog over here, a dog over here. I need an overhead so bad. I can't do it right now. Let's have a dog over here, dog over here, okay? If you need this, I'll draw a picture and send it to you, okay? This dog over here has capital AA, capital BB, capital CC, okay? Genetic. This dog over here has little a, little b, little c, okay? They have babies. Whoop, they come down here. These babies are going to have combinations of the capital A's and the little a's, and they'll keep going down as they have babies, down to where some baby down the line will just have little a's, little b's, little c's, or probably poodles. very. So, if you have one of them, I'm sorry. But there's pictures you can watch. That's kind of funny. But anyway, I'm not down. If you want a poodle at school, they're still dogs. The fact of the matter is, no matter how these codes filter down, okay, these are wolves up here, and these are poodles down here, okay? The genetic code is going down. What's that?
Page 77.
Is it in there? Is there a picture of it?
Page 77.
Take a look. It's cool when it goes all the way down. Does he have a poodle in there? I think Ted Ham's where I first heard about the poodle thing. It was just hilarious the way he talked about it. I still laugh about it. It goes all the way down. It's the way these genetic codes are going down. Why do we have different people in the world in different races, different kinds, different colors? They're not races. I don't use that word anymore. It's people groups and different people groups around the world. Let's follow these same dogs. Okay. Now understand the dogs that had the ABB. Okay. When they were having babies, they were still all dogs, right? Were there any cats that showed up? Any alligators that showed up? They were still dogs. Okay. The dog will never change. But you're going to have big dogs, you're going to have hairy dogs, you have non-hairy dogs, you have little dogs, you have medium-sized dogs, you're going to have black and white dogs, you can make spotted dogs, okay? They can make striped dogs. I don't know if I've ever seen a striped dog, but they might be out there. All these different codes are going to happen, okay? But they're all still dogs. The dog kind has never changed. It's just simply the types of dogs. Okay? We have a hairy dog, a medium hairy dog, and a no hairy dog. Okay? They all moved to Alaska. Okay? Somehow they ended up there. They go through a winter. The non-hairy dog, the medium hairy dog, they freeze, they die. Who's left? Hairy dog. Okay? Hairy dog means hairy dog. They have babies next year. They may have, if they're lucky, maybe one medium one, maybe one non, but they're mostly all going to be hairy dogs. Next winter comes. Non-hairy, medium hairy, die. Now we got more hairy dogs. They're all meeting each other and they're having babies. And over the course of time, what do we have left in Alaska?
Hairy dogs.
Hairy dogs. That's all we have. Okay? They're still dogs, but they have genetically changed themselves into being nothing but hairy dogs because that is what survives. If you go to Africa, they have the same three dogs, hairy dog, medium hairy dog. They die of hyper, whatever that is, the heat, okay? Now you have nothing but non-hairy dogs. The same process happens, and you have nothing but non-hairy dogs in Africa. The dogs are still the dogs, okay? That's never changed. But simply, it is a process of adapting to where you are. Let's go back to the melanin. Melanin, the substance in your skin. And again, I'm not going to go deep with genetics, but melanin is too cool because everybody has got brown skin. Adam and Eve, more than likely, if they were, well, not if, because they were perfect. Okay, because they were an actual perfect balance of melanin in their skin, there was a very good possibility that Adam and Eve were kind of a light brown to a very light brown, a tan type color to their skin. Again, I want you to understand something. They were not Caucasians. Okay, they were probably, because of this substance called melanin, they were probably a light tan to a light brown color. Adam and Eve had children. Cain, Abel, sons and daughters. Okay? Cain, let's say he gets a lot of the light colored melanin. Okay? Abel gets more of the capital A's. He gets more of the darker colored. Okay? So they come out with two different shades now. Okay? Sister over here, she gets a combination of a bunch of them and she comes out whatever color. Okay? But I have three kids out there, all different shades of the original brown. And what happens is, as they marry into their brothers and sisters, all the shades are beginning to change out there because different people are getting different codes. Now let's take it to Genesis chapter 11. Okay, well, correction. First, we gotta have the flood. We can't leave out the flood. Okay, God looks down on the world. Everybody says, "Whoop! Your sin is going to kill you." Now what happens is the people of the land right now, you're going to have from dark browns to no browns, or very, very light browns. We might call them Caucasians today. Okay, the world will be made up of all these different shades of brown. The flood happens, you have 8 people left. The idea that Noah married a colored lady, I think is very, very feasible because of where they came from and how the family lines work. I think it's a very good possibility. So when they come off the ark, you only have 8 people. How many people know that all the pictures show 8 Caucasians getting off the stupid ark? Okay, wasn't like that. They were not Caucasians. Okay, they were. There may have been one that may have been lighter, but they had different shades. They get off. They begin to infiltrate or replenish the entire earth. Okay, they did not separate amongst the different parts of the earth. They were intermingling in here and replenishing basically the same area. The people grew wicked, and now we have Genesis chapter 11, Tower of Babel. Man now decides that he is going to erect and that he is going to go and build a tower to God. He begins to go up. The tower begins to go up. The people get their language confined. They can't talk to each other. They can't understand each other anymore. Remember, the people, as far as the skin and the way God made them, is still the same. Okay, the melanin inside the skin, but now we have all different shades of brown building this Tower of Babel. Again, I take you back to the Tower of Babel. Look at your pictures. It's a whole bunch of Caucasians. That's not the way it was. All kinds of different people building the Tower of Babel. But now they get down, they speak a different language. They may have grouped, well, they definitely group by language. We know that. The Bible says they group by language. And go back to Genesis 11 and read all this. But make sure I'm telling you what I'm telling you is right. They all go back, they go by their languages, they begin to disperse amongst, the Bible says, the world at that time. Now they begin to set up, you have some that went to Africa, some went to Egypt, some went to Iran, Afghanistan, over here. If the darker colored would have decided to come to America, which they didn't come to America at that time, well, let's just use a fictitious type world. If they decided to come here, then all the colored people of the world would have been here in America. And in Africa would have been all the Caucasians. You understand it could have happened that way? Very easily. There's nothing special about America to a Caucasian, except for the fact that this is where the descendants of the Caucasian ended up coming. But here's the real question. Are we still related to the people in Africa? Absolutely. We're still related to them. Why? Because we all came from Adam and Eve. So we're still related to them. Are we related to the Chinese? To the Vietnamese? Absolutely. We are blood related to these people. There's only one race in all the world. And we got to stop saying there's different races. There are not different races in this world, my friends. There's one race. It is called the human race. There are different groups of people types, if you will. Remember I told you about the dogs, the hairy dogs, real comfortable in Alaska, bald dogs, real comfortable in Africa, right? Okay? And now we have America, now we have people. People go to Africa. The melanin in their skin begins to adapt to the sun. And what color do they turn? They begin to turn color, darker brown. Okay? We have other people who go to Alaska, move up into that area up there. I can tell you, I've been there. Not a lot of sun, a lot of cold. Okay, their melanin adapts to that. They begin to turn lighter brown. Caucasians. The people in China, I don't know however you get all the different colors. And what people begin to do is adapt to their group and to their types around the world. That's all it is. There's not one group of people any better than another group. They just adapted to their way of life. That's all. And today we have goofballs like Darwin to show up on the scene and says, "Oh no. This is all evolutionary genetic coding to where look at how the people are evolving and how the people move through society. So we have this group that's just like monkeys, they're just like apes, and you go up through the groups, and this group up here is the more intelligent, the more human of all of them." It's a stupid idea. And for a man who was a biblical theologian, who had graduated seminary, to come up with an idea is absolute. Satan had gotten a hold of this man's mind to even think of an idea like this. And yet when he wrote The Origin of Species, people adapted that and said, "What a brilliant mind. That man is so smart, it hurts." And everybody began to adapt to this idea. So when we begin to look at the Bible, we begin to see what God said. I'm looking for the verse. I wrote it down here somewhere, or it was in here, I'm not sure. Where God is in the book of Acts, I believe. Where Jesus made the statement, or Paul made the statement that I do not look at man as you look at man. You see, he had already seen that man was beginning to look at man, and he talks about the outward appearance. How many of us, and don't raise your hands, how many of us have grown up in families or in society that has said that this race is better than this race? How many of us have grown up with the idea that somehow we are superior to somebody else? That's why when God saw this, when God saw what was going on, he said, "I look at man not like you look like him on the outward appearance." God already knew that that's what we were going to be doing. And we were doing it 2,000 years ago. If we did it then, how much worse is it today? How often are we caught judging people by the outward appearance? Don't raise your hand. Okay. How many times we judge people by the things they're involved in because we believe that it's bad? How many times is all outward stuff that is going on, and we begin to judge people according to their color, according to the way they look, according to where they're from? We begin to put all these things together, and yet we're all carrying the same melanin inside of our skin, the same stuff. You know that if you go and get an organ transplant, your chances of a match are better from a different race than they are from or a different type of people. You know how we're trained? From a different type of people than they are from your own. I.e., if you're white, your chances of getting an organ transplant, a colored person, is better for the match than it is from a white person. Because the genetic coding inside of your same type of people, you'll find differences that go to about 0.2%. If you look at the same genetic differences outside of yours, it drops down to 0.0012, 12 one-thousandths of a percent difference. There's more differences if you put two Caucasians together or two colored people together. There's more differences in their genetic coding than there is between a colored person and a white person. That's crazy. That's crazy. But it is a genetical fact of science. Yeah, it is. To have any form of it is a very sad thing, because it is a dislike or a hate for somebody else. That when you get into the environment of it, it's hard sometimes to accept that which you do hate. And yet It's amazing when you get into circumstances where you need each other. You need each other. Again, I go back to the military. If we jump into a foxhole, okay, I don't care what color your skin is. I care about one thing. You know how to shoot that gun? Okay, that's my concern. Okay, because you need to have my back, and I got your back, partner. Okay, that's all. I don't care who you are, what you are, tall, short, skinny, fat, good looking or not good looking, black, yellow, brown, or red. I don't care who you are. Can you shoot that gun? And that's what we've got to be. That's what we've got to begin to come to. I don't care who you are, what you are, black, red, yellow. I don't care what you are. The same concept goes on just like a war. I care about this. Can you shoot that gun? How much of the word do you know to where we can build each other? How much we live off of each other? Can you shoot that gun? I want to know, and I want to help build you. I want to help you grow. I want to help you and do what you can to help you in your Christian faith to be able to go out and be able to share it more with other people and get rid of some of this prejudice that's out here. Down here in the South, I know. I've learned about it more. I was raised in the North, and quite frankly, I'm not sure if I even knew what prejudice was when growing up. I really don't. Didn't have a lot of other ethnic groups around our area. They're primarily Caucasian, but across the bridge we had a lot of them in Buffalo and in Niagara Falls. But I don't know. We played hockey with them. We played sports with them. There just never was a problem. We played with them. They played with us. Okay, I want to think they were doing a special thing by playing with us. But the whole thing is that there wasn't a problem. I really got introduced to racism was when I moved down here to the South. That's when I got introduced. Had somebody one time. I was running a store downtown. Won't mention where it was, but I'm managing a store. Somebody pulled up and they had I guess a Confederate flag license plate on there, and I had somebody come into work and said, "I want to know what you're going to do about that license plate." I was like, "For what are you talking about? That person out there's got a Confederate flag license plate on there, and I want it removed." I said, "For what? It's a flag. I mean, that's what we used to fly here. Yes, I'm talking." They're getting mad at me because I'm playing ignorant to something that really and truly I got no idea what they're talking about. I have no earthly idea that there's any form of racism attached to that flag whatsoever. And they're getting mad at me because you know what that represents. You know. And I'm like, dude, I'm telling you, man, I am lost. I am 100% lost on this issue. I don't know what you're talking about. And I got introduced in a lot of ways like that, to where I realized there are people that really and truly can't stand this issue, or they can't stand the other people. There's a hatred amongst it. But the more I studied Darwinian theory, the more I got into his book. Again, don't forget the name of the book. I had it written down here. The origin of species, the origin of species, and the selection, and the let me find out again. The origin of species by means of natural selection or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. That's the whole name of Darwin's book, folks. And when we introduced evolution into America, we introduced a racist society that we were never going to be able to get rid of. Because the more evolution that was packed into our society, the more racism was also packed into our society. And now you had different people on different levels that were closer to monkeys. Because why? The evolutionary theory says they were. And therefore, you've got people putting pygmies in a cage with an orangutan to show people the differences or the similarities. And have you ever thought about it? A pygmy is less related to an orangutan than an Italian. I'll tell you why. This is something that just came to me when I was getting ready for these weird thoughts come to me. And I apologize to my wife's family because they're all Italian. But the fact of the matter is, how can you put a pygmy next to an orangutan and say they look each other just because one's brown and one's actually black? The orangutan is, okay? Pygmies ain't got no hair. If you put an Italian in there, they're full of hair. So an Italian would be closer, I think, to an orangutan than a pygmy would, because at least he's got the hair all over his body. See, pygmies ain't got no hair, so what happened to all that? I'll say, I apologize to the family, but I still love them all. But the fact, if you're going to take one, take them all, and put it all together and begin to look at this stuff. But remember melanin. Melanin is in your skin. When you get a tan this summer, that's your melanin, okay? You're actually tanning more into probably what Adam and Eve were like. Adam and Eve were not Caucasians. That's Brother Jack. You put Brother Jack next to me, and you'll see we're both Caucasian. Okay, we're both considered Caucasians. Okay, but look at his arm and look at mine. The darkness of his arm compared to mine. Yeah, we're both. Huh? That's what it is, though. All it is the melanin inside of him. And if you take him and go 5 shades darker, you'll have a light-colored person that we would consider. And yet, what's the difference? One's melanin positive, and one's melanin negative. But everybody is a human. Every person is a human. That's all it is, folks. You're melanin positive or melanin negative. But we're all human. Jesus came to die for all the human race, not for any color. He died for the human race so that everybody could be saved. And that's the fact of the Bible. We all came from one race. The Bible tells us here in Genesis, the verses I gave you, and Jesus said, stop looking at people's outward appearance because I don't look at it. I look at their inward appearance. We need to start looking more at the inward heart of mankind and love them and share the love of Christ with them.